mid to high teens. Friday will start a little cooler with some mist and fog maybe in places, but generally another dry day across the east. Increasingly cloudy further west with some wet and very windy weather in the northwest. And with high tides, that could cause some problems. So there's a Met Office yellow warning in place for that, and the potential for more wet and windy weather into the weekend. So do keep up to date with the forecast. Bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Don't talk about me. I don't want somebody to talk about me.
Well, I have a message to that gun-loving illegal migrant who goes by the name of Madapasa, and I'll be delivering that live on my show. Plus,
last year he promised to end the hotel farce. So where does he actually think they're going to end up?
another huge Labour U-turn. Starmer expands the use of migrant hotels and...
I think it would be a crying shame if this is the last we see of Hugh Edwards on television, when the allegations have turned out to be not that much.
A procession of people who stood up for Hugh Edwards are now telling us that Labour's Taylor Swift gate is a non-story. I think their judgment might be a bit off. Plus...
It's a personal decision, first of all, if you sing it, and there were managers who sang it and others who didn't.
Should the new German manager of England sing our national anthem? Also...
I stand here also as a black man whose ancestors were taken in chains from Africa at the barrel of a gun.
Yep, get ready for another policy that wasn't in the manifesto. Starmer wants to weaken our position on the UN Security Council. Plus, should people be fined and taken to court if they refuse to say hello to their colleagues? Well, let's say a big hello to my panel. It's the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, landlord and activist Adam Brooks, and the political commentator, Zoe Grunewald. Oh, and can you work out what's wrong here?
They're killing children. What's the purpose? Be proud of your heritage? Y'all understand there's a genocide, right?
Get ready, Britain, here we go. Is it time for an investigation into Sir Keir Starmer? Next.
Good Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB newsroom. UN peacekeepers say an Israeli tank has again fired at one of its watchtowers in southern Lebanon. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has held an emergency meeting on increasing Gaza aid. It comes after the US threatened to take away some military support unless Israel boosted aid within 30 days. It comes as fighting continues in Gaza, and Israel also hit Beirut for the first time in 5 days. While Hezbollah has fired more rockets into northern Israel, injuring at least 2 people. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has said he is looking at sanctioning 2 Israeli cabinet members. Back in the UK, the government is scrambling to find more hotel spaces for migrants after a surge in small boat arrivals. Almost 14,000 have arrived under Labour, overtaking the number of crossings under the previous government in 2024. Meanwhile, Italy has begun sending asylum seekers to Albania under a controversial new plan, with a naval ship arriving on Monday, transferring 16 men from Bangladesh and Egypt. Italy says up to 36,000 asylum seekers could be sent to Albania each year, but only non-vulnerable men from safe countries will qualify. Inflation has dropped below the 2% target for the first time in over 3 years. Figures for September show it fell to 1.7%, the lowest since April 2021. Analysts had expected a smaller fall to 1.9% and now warn inflation could rise again, with higher energy costs on the horizon. In other news, 1 man and 2 women have been arrested on suspicion of murder following the death of a toddler in Northern Ireland. The police service of Northern Ireland said it was called to a report of the sudden death of a child in Dungannon on Sunday morning. Tavia Michaela Zaminis da Costa, who was just weeks away from her 2nd birthday, was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, police have launched a manhunt after a 3-year-old toddler and a father were rushed to hospital following an unprovoked attack in West London. Police have now released a CCTV image of the man who was reportedly seen shoving the father to the floor whilst he walked along Westbourne Grove in London with his child. The incident happened in West London on the 5th of October and saw the male victim hit his head against a wall with quite serious injuries. Both the father and the child have since been discharged from hospital. And finally, Thomas Tuchel says he's very excited and honoured after being confirmed as England's new head coach. He officially starts in January with the goal of qualifying for the 2026 World Cup. The former Chelsea and Bayern Munich boss is the 3rd non-Englishman to take the job, following Sven-Göran Eriksson and Fabio Capello. Tuchel has apologised for having a German passport, but insisted he was ready to prove wrong the critics who were against a foreign coach taking charge. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. It's time for Keir Starmer to do the right thing and launch an investigation into the Taylor Swift scandal. If he's got nothing to hide, then launch an investigation and stop the story dead. The Prime Minister met Taylor Swift and her mother at Wembley after Number 10 allegedly pressured the Met to break with protocol and give a VVIP taxpayer-funded police escort. Scotland Yard initially dismissed the idea of granting Taylor Swift enhanced security for 2 of her Eras Tour concerts, warning that granting the US star VVIP protection would breach its long-standing protocols. Starmer accepted £2,600 worth of tickets. Starmer's Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, had personally got involved in the security decision. Today, another Labour frontbencher, Peter Kyle, has declared that he attended the concert. He's declared that very late in the day, hasn't he? The Ministerial Code states that ministers should avoid any conflict of interest, but also the perception of one. Well, Number 10 got involved in policing matters for Taylor Swift, didn't they? Number 10 then accepted free tickets to see Taylor Swift. Simple. Well, let's have a look, shall we, at everyone telling you that this isn't a story. So, John Sopel has tried to bat it away. It's just a PM meeting a pop star. Whatever next? Well, look, I'm sorry, John, but I'm not really sure that I trust your judgment, mate. Not after you went into bat for Hugh Edwards, both on Twitter, wishing him well. Yeah, there we go. And then on camera.
We now know there was no illegality. So what are you left with? Someone's private life has come under scrutiny, who is now unwell. I think it would be a crying shame if this is the last we see of Hugh Edwards on television, when the allegations have turned out to be not that much.
If we'd listened to Sopel, Hugh Edwards would probably still be doing the 10 o'clock news. The former editor of The Sun, BBC, podcaster David Yelland also thinks that this is a non-story. He's another one who presumably now bitterly regrets thinking that the Hugh Edwards scandal wasn't a story either.
My own personal view is that this is a disgrace. If you walked in this room, I would give him a hug. Is the first thing I would do.
Give him a hug. We've got Mikey Smith at the Daily Mirror. Mikey was obsessed with Partygate, treating this picture of Boris Johnson during a Christmas quiz in Downing Street like Boris had invited the whole of the hacienda round to his house during lockdown.
Boris Johnson was put on the spot today during PMQs when the Daily Mirror published a photograph which very much appeared to show him at a social event in Downing Street behind me during the December lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, you know, doing a quiz via laptops during lockdown, I mean, the shame. Anyway, Mikey now thinks that Swiftgate is a non-story. Could that be political bias? Paul Brand at ITV won awards for Partygate. In fact, he's still so utterly obsessed with it, he's actually pinned a tweet about it to his Twitter profile. I had to scroll through his timeline earlier. Look, I might have missed it, but I couldn't seem to find much on Starmer and Swift. Is that willful ignorance? Look, the fact is, we know there's a story here because all of the right people are telling you that there isn't one. Come on, Keir. What have you got to hide? Let's have an investigation. Let's get the thoughts from my panel now. We've got the director at the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks. And, of course, we also have a political correspondent and journalist, Zoe Grunewald. Mark, I'll start with you on this. Look, you know, surely the one way to put this to bed is just get everything out in the open. Let's just have an investigation. And the people telling us that it's a non-story, well, they've got form for this stuff, haven't they?
Yes, and it clearly isn't a non-story because a good number of outlets, not just GBNews, have decided it is a story. It's on the front page of the Daily Mail, I think it is today. So it is a story, and there are a whole range of reasons for that. Firstly, that Labour in opposition said going to be completely different when we're in. We're going to act in a completely different fashion. They didn't need to say that, but they did. Secondly, the point that you made about conflict of interest, Patrick. You know, I'm not suggesting, we can't know that there was intervention because these people had tickets, but there is a perception of it. Yeah. That's problematic. And then above all else, it's how the story's coming out piece by piece. So I don't know whether you necessarily need a formal inquiry as such, but I think on this programme a few weeks ago, my recommendation was the Prime Minister should sit down for an hour-long interview with someone like you and just say, here is the whole story from top to toe. He should have done that 3 or 4 weeks ago. He might even then say, these are 2 or 3 things that I think I got wrong, and I apologise for them, or we're going to change the law in that area. But the minute you see politicians trying to say we abided by the rules or no comment, and the story comes out one little piece at the time. Now, I'm not that bothered that he met Taylor Swift and Taylor Swift's mother, but it's just another part of the story coming out. Put the whole lot on the table. I'd actually do it in a TV interview rather than a parliamentary inquiry. Yeah, I actually think it's quite arrogant and elitist in a way of people like John Sopel to come out and say this is a non-story. I mean, it's quite condescending, really. Maybe just because John Sopel regularly meets, you know, high-profile people on the posh London dinner party circuit. Also, what if he's met Taylor Swift's mother? Well, actually, I think for most people, that's way out of bounds, actually. And for most people, they would never be offered a free ticket to something like that. And I think it's quite arrogant of certain media figures to suggest that this is a non-story.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I put Keir Starmer in that elite group. You know, he's not a man of the people, like Labour try and suggest. This whole Taylor Swift story, for me, it's boring, really, but it's only now become interesting because of the way the Prime Minister and the government are acting. Something looks up. And as Mark said, who is advising these people? Why did they not come out a few weeks ago and said, this is what it is, we enjoyed the concert, we are going to change this, we got it wrong, or we're going to carry on doing that. At the end of the day, the Met Police assessed there was no threat to that concert. So why were they overruled? Who made them do that?
Yeah.
Sadiq Khan's got tickets. Yvette Cooper got tickets. Keir Starmer...
Sue Gray's son.
Yeah, Sue Gray's son got, I think it was £2,000 worth of tickets.
It's roughly, about 1,600 quid, I think.
But Keir Starmer, our 60-odd-year-old Prime Minister, has gone to a teeny-boppy concert twice. What is that about? For me, that's just as embarrassing as the whole affair.
Well, quite. Zoe, look, I mean, just on this, so I played a little clip there. One of the many things about the Boris Johnson scandal was, we saw a clip there from Mikey Smith at the Mirror, who, by the way, I've never met, and I'm sure he's a perfectly nice guy. I don't want to go after him personally or anything like that. But, there's this picture that, at face value, in isolation, initially appears to be there's champagne on the table, we're in lockdown, they're absolutely having it off in Downing Street. And then when you zoom out a bit, you realise there's a laptop there, it's a quiz for Downing Street staff. Boris lives there, so it's not really, the end of the world. They asked a question in Parliament over that. They were hammering it. That was a story. That was a resignation matter for a Prime Minister at the time. Surely this is a story.
Well, the resignation matter for Boris Johnson was mainly the fact that he had willfully misled Parliament, which is something Parliament found out and an independent committee found that out itself. This is slightly different. I mean, Keir Starmer declared his tickets. Everything that has been done so far has been declared. What I do agree with, and what I think is a good point to make, is that I think Labour could have really put some clear water between themselves and the Tories right when this whole freebies scandal started and said, OK, this was all above, everything we did was within the rules, but we're hearing that you guys don't like it and you don't think the rules are fit for purpose. So we're not going to do that anymore, and we're going to launch an investigation into these rules, or we're going to review them. And then, maybe put everything out on the table and said, that's it, end of, we're not going to do it anymore. I think the problem is that their comms was slow to catch up. And they did a bit of pretending it wasn't an issue, which allowed the media to run with it. I personally don't think this Taylor Swift story is a massive issue. I think there are far more important things to look at. Plenty of Prime Ministers have met pop acts. Harold Wilson met the Beatles.
But where did he meet them, though? In Downing Street, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, and
which he could have done.
One Direction was, hugging David Cameron, if I remember correctly, as well.
But that's kind of the point, though, isn't it? I mean, look, I'm not going to go to... Well, I haven't got the time at the moment, anyway, to go to Howard Wilson's declared interest. But maybe he did accept free tickets from them. I don't know. But I think I agree with you that there are much bigger issues around today. The impending threat of World War III, what's going on in the China, all of this stuff, the economy. I get that. But this, for me, cuts right to the core of not just the psychology of the people in power, but also the psychology of a lot of kind of the snidey, snivelling lot of the media.
Yeah, it goes to character, basically, doesn't it? That's what it goes to. So although it's about a pop concert, it goes to character and integrity. I will just say I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to leap to the defence of the Daily Mirror, Patrick, because I think there is a difference here. Between, I don't know whether that picture shows that rules were broken, but Boris Johnson's government was making these things illegal. It's not as if Keir Starmer has said it's illegal to go to a Taylor Swift concert and then is found at one, right? So there is a difference here.
I get what you're saying, yes, but the police protection thing was the same level of police protection that the Home Office initially went to court to stop Prince Harry getting.
That I agree. And so with each passing day, more questions arise. And you know what? It's always the cover-up that gets you, more than the crime. And if you come out early and say, actually, the story's not as bad as you think, I probably did get this wrong and that wrong, maybe I technically abided by the rules, but it was an error of judgment, I think then the British public are a fair-minded lot and give you another crack of the whip. But if it looks like you're running away from telling the truth, that's a terrible look.
It does look like that, and I would like to see an independent inquiry that shows us the text messages, the emails, the correspondence between the government, Taylor Swift's party, the Met Police, just so we know that nothing untoward happened. No pressure, no bribes, no threats of being sacked or anything like that. We want to know why our taxpayers' money was initially spent on this patrol.
Apparently the police initially said, well, no, and they said, this is a bit weird that you're asking for this. And the Attorney-General got involved. Then things started to change.
But the Met Police have said, we are operationally independent, our decisions are operationally independent. They sought advice from the Attorney-General, as far as I'm aware, to see what the legal advice would be. They're obviously concerned because there is a court case going on now, I believe, about somebody who was hurt when there was a motorcade for a slightly less important royal will. And I think that kind of explains the chain of events. It sounds to me like the Met Police made the decision. Yeah. The Home Secretary and the Mayor of London, who obviously would have an interest in this, had a discussion, said, can you review that advice? Then they sought advice from the Attorney General, and then they made a decision.
Taylor Swift got exactly what she wanted, and then the Prime Minister rocks up at a gig. You see what I mean? It's a bit... I just think all of this will go away. I'm also trying desperately... Well, in fact, I don't actually have to try that hard to imagine what would be said if this was the other way around.
Yeah, well...
And that's really why I'm coming at it from this. I am not, personally, but I had no desire to go and watch Taylor Swift. This may come as a shock to people. I had no desire to go and watch Taylor Swift. I don't really care in the act of our Prime Minister going and watching a concert with his missus. Right? I don't care about that. But what I do care about is hypocrisy.
No, exactly
and I think that there's a bit of hypocrisy here from the likes of John Sopel, from the likes of certain people on the left, and from the Prime Minister himself.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it goes to. And I also don't want us to actually get into a position in which leading politicians can't accept hospitality. I think it's fine for our Prime Minister to meet the most successful pop star in the world at one of her concerts.
Especially after the
that's not really the problem. You're right. It is the hypocrisy of it. And I rather like Zoe's explanation, by the way. I just wish a senior cabinet minister would sit on the sofa who would actually know all the detail and lay it out as clearly as you have done. And they have refused to do that.
I do think there has been a slight failure, call it inexperience in government, call it catching up, of just getting ahead of the story in the way you would expect a government.
Just lay it all out.
And I agree with that, yeah.
I think if we found out that Taylor Swift would have cancelled the concert because she was in fear on the streets of London, and then we knew that, and the country would lose out of the billions that she generates, we'd understand. But it is all this underhand whispers and behaviour.
And it could all be cleared up. It could all be cleared up.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Oh, there we go. All right, OK, lovely start. Thank you very, very much. Well, this is something to get Keir Starmer very excited, because it's time now for the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win the equivalent of having an extra £3,000 in your bank account every single month for the next year. It's a whopping 36k in cold, hard, tax-free cash. Here's all the details that you need to make that money yours.
This is luck.
Yeah, good luck, everybody. Still to come, Sky News have been left with egg on their face after their own investigation into the links between the so-called far right and the summer riots found that it was foreign interference that played the biggest role in whipping up the unrest. So is it finally time for the media and all those lovely lefties to stop blaming Nigel Farage for the riots? In fact, do they owe him an apology? No-nonsense Reform UK MP Lee Anderson joins me very soon. But first...
It's a personal decision, first of all, if you sing it, and there were managers who sang it and others who didn't.
Former Chelsea boss Thomas Tuchel will become the first German to manage the England national team when he takes over in January. His predecessor, Lee Carsley, refused to sing the national anthem, and Tuchel is apparently undecided on the matter. But should it not be compulsory for the England manager to sing the national anthem? Going head-to-head on that next, a football writer, Harry Harris, a former UKIP leader, Neil Hamilton. Don't miss that.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The former royal correspondent for the Sun newspaper, Charles Ray. Good to see you this morning, Charles, and so good to see Catherine back to work with a hug.
It is. It's fantastic. I mean, there are a few royal jobs that touch at the heartstrings, and this is certainly one of those. And I think it's the first time we've actually seen Catherine back in a royal duty since she herself confirmed that she'd finished chemotherapy.
Done so much, haven't they, the Princess of Wales and the King, to raise awareness for these cancers.
Here we have both the King and Catherine having, explained to the nation and the rest of the world that they were battling, or are still battling, cancer, just like everyone else.
How sincere is all of this? I mean, it looks like she's a wonderful, kind, caring woman, but I don't know. I've never met her.
Well, she is a wonderful, kind, caring woman. That is without a shadow of a doubt. And William heard about this young lady on a visit to the air ambulance, and they invited her because she's a photographer, so she wanted to take. She has a bucket list and wanted to take pictures of an investiture. I mean, make no mistake, people like Catherine are just absolutely wonderful in what they do and what and how they do it. I mean, and Catherine is the superstar of the royal family. Of that, there is no doubt.
It's the cockles of my heart, Charles. It really does. It's really good to see you. Thanks very much.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Charles. Thanks. And Liz, who is this 16-year-old amateur photographer who was hugged by Princess of Wales yesterday, has said it was a dream come true.
I bet it was.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, is it time that we stop blaming the so-called far right and Nigel Farage for the summer riots? In fact, they need to apologise to Nigel Farage now. I'll reveal the reason why later. But first, should it be compulsory for the New England manager, Thomas Tuchel, to sing the national anthem? It's time for the head-to-head. The former Chelsea boss, Thomas Tuchel, was today unveiled as the new England manager after his predecessor, Gareth Southgate, resigned following England's defeat by Spain in the Euro 2024 final. His appointment has certainly raised a few eyebrows, not least because he will become the first German and only the third non-British permanent manager of the men's team when he takes over in January. Lee Carsley, who sparked controversy by choosing not to sing the national anthem, will remain as interim manager until then. So speaking today, Tuchel wouldn't be drawn when asked whether or not he would belt out God Save the King.
It's a personal decision, first of all, if you sing it, and there were managers who sang it and others who didn't. I have not made my decision yet. I want to be very honest with you. Your anthem is very moving. The English anthem is very moving. I experienced it several times here at Wembley and even out with the players in a FA Cup final. So it was very touching. No matter what decision I will take, we have a bit of time until March. I will always show my respect to my new role.
So tonight I'm asking, should it be compulsory for Tuchel to sing the anthem? And come to think of it, shouldn't we have an English manager as well? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/yoursay. Tweet me at GBNews. Go and vote in our poll. Going head-to-head on this now, our football writer, Harry Harris, and the former UKIP leader, Neil Hamilton. Chavs, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Harry, should it be compulsory for the England manager to sing the national anthem?
Well, Patrick, I've got my 3 lines mug, as you can see, so I'm well prepared for the answer. Yeah, of course, it should be compulsory, and he should be compelled to have a full English breakfast every morning and bangers and mash for lunch.
OK.
Well, what a load of
OK.
OK. Half the England team are only just English. Half the England team don't sing the national anthem. I mean, I would even put it to you, is singing the national anthem obsolete? You know, does it provoke too much violence? The English fans always boo the opposition national anthem. Do we really need it?
OK, all right. I think I'm just going to say the English national team are English. They have passports. Neil, what do you think?
Well, Irish, of course.
Look, I get what you mean. Look, I get what you mean. It's whether or not certain other people on Twitter didn't. Right, Neil, what's your take on this? Should he sing the national anthem?
Isn't this debate absolutely pathetic? Is there another country in the world that's ashamed of its national anthem? This is the England football team that will be representing England in international competitions. The English national anthem is one of the great symbols of our country. If Tuchel was still the manager of Paris Saint-Germain, would he have any objections to singing the Marseillaise? Or if he was still the manager of Mainz, would he have any objections to singing Deutschland über alles? God Save the King is not exactly the horse vessel lead, is it? So what is wrong with singing our national anthem? Football brings people together in an international context, but to stand up for their own country, and it's a massively symbolic game. And I think this is absolutely ridiculous. Personally, watching Tuchel's body language today, I think he would want to sing this, but he's afraid of the wokerati, the woke left. You know, George Orwell once said that an English socialist intellectual would rather be caught stealing from a church poor box than standing up for God Save the King. And that's ultimately what it's all about, isn't it? We've got too many people in this country on the left who just don't stand up for their own country.
Right, that's a hot take from Neil Hamilton there, because your angle, as far as I can gather on this, Neil, is that it's not actually because he's German that he might not sing the national anthem. It's because he might be afraid of enraging the woke mob, which is it's certainly a point. Harry, look, if he wants to endear himself to the country, nothing would rub the proverbial all over the Daily Mail's back page today, other than a German standing there and singing the national anthem. And I put it to you that it's not really just the national anthem. It's a rallying cry before a competitive game of sport. That's also what it is. And if he's there for the team and he's there for the boys, he should muck in with that.
Yeah, well, Patrick, you know, I believe in freedom of choice, freedom of speech. He's German. He has a freedom of his choice whether to sing that national anthem. It's a question of whether we should actually have a German in charge of the national team, of course. He's a third foreigner. But again, that's up to the Football Association to find the best man for the job, whether he's English or not. Of course, if you are realistic, there are very few, if any, realistic candidates that are English to coach the national team. And that's the problem we find ourselves in. But the previous man who managed the team for the last 3 games, he refused to sing the national anthem.
Yeah, which, by the way, I thought was absolutely ridiculous. And then he bottled it as well. Then he came out and was like, well, I'd quite like to go back to managing the under-21s. Good grief, that guy, honestly. I mean, just complete washout, wasn't he? He was from Birmingham, wasn't he, Lee Carsley? Played for Ireland, presumably because he wasn't good enough to play for us, and then refused to sing the national anthem. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
But this is the point, Patrick. The point is we have an English Premier League that's owned virtually in whole by foreign owners. You know, it's not English football anymore. It's a diverse
the England national team's a bit different. Oh, yeah, OK. Neil, I'm just going to go... Can I go, to use a footballing phrase here, Neil, can I go route one and just ask you whether or not we should have a German in charge of the England national team?
I have no problem with having a German in charge of our national team, or a Frenchman or a Russian or whatever, if they can do the job properly. After all, we are engaged with a professional to coach team and manage the team. So I think the nationality is irrelevant here. But if it's the national team, whoever does these jobs needs to commit himself 100% to everything for which that team stands. And that includes, in my view, singing our national anthem, of which we should all be proud, because it's not just the words of the song itself, but the fact that it does act as a symbol to bring the whole country together.
Yeah, Patrick, I'm sorry, this is double talk. You know, the guy just said to do the job properly. Do the job properly as a coach of any football team is to win football matches. England can't win any tournaments, so they brought some guy in who can win football matches and win a tournament. That's what he said, to do the job properly. It isn't to be Taylor Swift and sing properly a national anthem or badly. It's to win football matches.
I mean, look, just to round this off, you know, if I was trousering £4.5 million a year, I'd sing absolutely flipping anything. So, anyway.
I can imagine you would, Patrick. Yes.
All right, guys, let's take care. Thank you very, very much. That's football writer Harry Harris and former UKIP leader Neil Hamilton. Who do you agree with? Should it be compulsory for Thomas Tuchel to sing the national anthem? Blair on X says he's not English. Of course he shouldn't. Just do a good job managing the national team. Tory on X says, yes, he should sing England's national anthem. How can he lead the team if he doesn't sing it? Look, I just think the best thing for Thomas Tuchel to do is sing the national anthem. Just do it. You'd endear yourself to the British public forever, or the English public anyway, forever. Be fine, and we'd never have to talk about it again. Your verdict is now in. 49% of you think that he should sing the national anthem. 51% of you say that he shouldn't sing the national anthem. That is, I think, the tightest poll that we have ever seen here on Patrick Christys tonight. So there we go. Maybe there was a little bit of German interference. Coming up, the assisted dying bill was introduced to Parliament today, with MPs set to vote on it next month. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has actually joined the chorus of high-profile names warning that the law could have disastrous consequences. One of the very few times I found myself in agreement with the old Archbishop, actually. I'm going to be joined by the disability campaigner, George Fielding. And the worry here is that it could be a slippery slope for people like him. It's going to be a fascinating story, that, OK, and one that actually will have consequences going forward for years to come, so do watch it. But first, Sky News have had a shocker. They set out to investigate the links between the so-called far-right and the summer protests, only to find out that foreign interference played the biggest role in whipping up the unrest. So is this time now for the media and their lefty mates to stop blaming Nigel Farage for the riots? Lee Anderson joins me, and I wonder if he thinks Nigel deserves an apology. Stay tuned.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Still some pretty heavy rain around at the moment, but for many, tomorrow's going to be a fine day. We'll see some sunny spells, not as humid as today, but still pretty mild. Low pressures nearby. These weather fronts just dangling across the country have been producing pulses of heavy rain through the day. Still working northwards at the moment, especially wet over parts of northern England. Met Office yellow warning in place here, but staying pretty soggy over eastern Scotland. Rain moving across eastern England and out into the North Sea, and many western areas actually becoming dry overnight. It's not going to turn chilly though. Temperatures holding up in double digits. Many towns and cities staying in the teens. A drab start then early doors over eastern England, and a pretty wet start across parts of Scotland, particularly across the north. This rain slowly clearing away though through the morning. Actually, for rush hour through the central belt, it may well be drying up. Certainly elsewhere, many places having a dry morning rush hour. A lot of cloud initially over these eastern areas, but clearing away, and elsewhere we'll see some clearer skies coming through. Just maybe one or two scattered showers for Wales and southwest England, and as we get through the day we'll see a few more of those here and perhaps for Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. The rain over northern Scotland, that continues to move away, and for many it's a dry and a bright day tomorrow. Some pleasant autumn sunshine. Turning a bit breezy in the west as a few more showers come in through the afternoon, but most relatively light winds and still pretty warm. Not as humid as today, but these temperatures still well above the average for the time of year, mid to high teens. Friday will start a little cooler with some mist and fog maybe in places, but generally another dry day across the east. Increasingly cloudy further west with some wet and very windy weather in the northwest, and with high tides that could cause some problems. So there's a Met Office yellow warning in place for that, and the potential for more wet and windy weather into the weekend. So do keep up to date with the forecast. Bye for now.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tomorrow as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tomorrow, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back. Coming up, could the right to die fast become the duty to die? But first, Sky News have been left embarrassed after they set out to investigate the links between the so-called far right and the summer riots, only to find out that it was largely foreign interference that whipped up the unrest.
Sky News has, for the first time, uncovered and mapped the networks on Telegram, the encrypted messaging app where the flames were fanned and the riots were organised.
One interesting thing we can see here, especially considering this is the first day, is that the source of most of the information that people are talking about on Telegram isn't British English language communities.
The most widely shared content on Telegram during the initial 3 days of the unrest was primarily authored by non-domestic accounts from the USA and Europe.
Gosh, well, who would have thought it? I mean, surely not after, you know, the police in Pakistan charged a man with cyber-terrorism for his alleged role in spreading claims about the riots. Oh, and just a few weeks ago, the BBC confronted a 20-year-old man in Finland who apparently gave rioters in the UK some arson tips. Just for the record as well, probably worth noting that that chap was not white himself either. But I'm joined now by Reform UK MP Lee Anderson. Lee, do we think that people owe Nigel Farage an apology for calling it the Farage riots?
I think they certainly do, Patrick. I mean, all along, anybody with an ounce of common sense knew this was a load of nonsense. They keep banging on in Parliament, you know, the mainstream media about these far-right groups in Great Britain. Seriously, Patrick, I don't know who they are, these far-right groups. There's certainly nobody I know. It's just a lot of nonsense. It's very, very easy, Patrick, and lazy to blame these groups when, you know, the problem lies elsewhere. We need a reality check in this country and stop blaming other people and realise that, you know, the deep-rooted problems we've got in this country come from our own mistakes that we keep continually making.
Yeah, I mean, look, wherever the initial sources of misinformation came from, there were obviously cases of people in this country. I mean, there was a bloke with a swastika on his back, for example, and a migrant hotel did get set on fire. So I think people do have to take personal responsibility and not get whipped up into that kind of frenzy or behave.
Patrick, you're always going to get these lunatics in any country. You're always going to get this. But, you know, to keep blaming, you know, a group of people saying that, you know, sort of rising on the streets, creating mayhem, causing problems. It's not there. This is just a few individuals which the press pick up, and then they sort of, force that narrative onto us that there's large swathes of society that are going around causing problems, and there's not. It's just a few idiots.
Yeah, I mean, so we've had the BBC now. We've had, like, the actual police when it comes to the bloke that was arrested in Lahore in Pakistan, and we've had Sky News all do deep dives into where the initial sources of misinformation came from and where they were pumped out. And all of them, overwhelmingly, have said that it was non-British. So this idea that Britain, Lee, is full of far-right racists is wrong, isn't it? And I think I can't help but wonder whether or not that was actually pumped out there so that Keir Starmer didn't have to deal with immigration.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just going to reiterate what I've just said, Patrick. It is a lazy argument. It's a cheap argument. It's easy to blame a certain group of people in this country, you know, for all the problems that we have. No, let's be honest, Patrick. These problems that are happening on our streets have been created by Parliament, have been created by politicians, and when it goes all goes wrong, we start and look for certain sections of society to blame. And it's nonsense. Like I say, there are a few idiots in this country. We know that. That's always been the case. But this is cheap, it's lazy, and it's...
and we saw riots in Leeds, which were absolutely appalling, and that was an incredibly diverse area. And that was unequivocally whipped up by people in that area, because that was a domestic issue in the local town. And then we saw the Manchester Airport incident. And what we've seen there was people outside a police station, you know, shouting and saying, oh, you know, like, bring out that police officer. Like, again, that was, we know, whipped up by people in that community, in another incredibly diverse area. So it's interesting, really, isn't it, to see the contrast in the way that those things are spoken about and the way that that night of rioting that never happened is talked about. But, Lee, new polling has revealed that voters now feel more positively about your party, Reform, than they do about Labour. A poll of 2,000 adults found that 28% of voters have a very or quite positive view of your party, compared to 27% who feel the same way about Labour. So, I mean, are you the unofficial opposition now? What's going on?
I think we're the unofficial opposition, Patrick. I think we are the official opposition. Listen, there's only 5 of us in Parliament at the moment, and we're making more noises on the opposition benches than the Conservative Party. Well, the Lib Dems are a waste of time anyway. They might as well be sat with the Labour Party. The Conservative Party are very, very quiet. They've got their eyes on other things. But we're speaking the language of common sense. We've seen just today, Patrick, there was a debate in Westminster Hall to save our steel industry. Now, yesterday in the House of Commons, over 70 Labour MPs turned up for a debate on Gaza. Today, in Westminster Hall, when we're talking about saving British jobs and British steel, there was 5 Labour MPs turned up. That just shows you where their priorities lie.
Remarkable. I never thought that we would see a Labour minister in the shape of Ed Miliband celebrating the closure of a coal plant or anything. I mean, how times change, eh? Unbelievable. And unequivocally, reform can make ground there, and probably are. But we are going to be having live tomorrow the Tory leadership, whatever we're calling it now, the race to lead, right? So you've got Badenoch versus Jenrick. Robert Jenrick came and did an interview a couple of days ago. Kemi Badenoch sent a representative to do an interview yesterday. Who are you more fearful of, Lee?
Cool. I'm probably more fearful of Ed Miliband, to be honest with you, Patrick. As you just said, I mean, the 2 Tory leadership contestants do not scare me at all. She's a nice lady. I get on really well with her. Rob's got a big problem here, Patrick. He's playing the ECHR card. He's playing the card on being tough on legal migration and illegal migration. The problem Rob's got, he's got to take the parliamentary party along with him on this journey, and they will never back him on leaving the ECHR. It's a big problem for him.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. He's going to be making that case, and Kemi Badenoch is going to be making her case equally tomorrow night. And then after that show as well, I'm going to be joined with a panel, fantastic panel. It's got a Labour MP, a Lib Dem MP, Reform's here. Yusuf is on there as well. We've got Kwasi Kwarteng on. And just on that note, and Lee, I will now bid you good evening and release you back off into the wild. So thank you very much, Lee Anderson there, Reform UK MP. Yes, decision time in the Tory leadership election. The race to lead heats up on Thursday, the 17th of October. Robert Jenrick versus Kemi Badenoch live right here on GB News from 7 p.m. And then reaction from my live studio audience, a panel of political heavyweights from 9. Look, we want you to get involved. Send in your questions to gbviews@gbnews.com. You need to put decision time in the headline of that email. Please don't forget to include your full name and where you are from. You know, this is one of the only channels, really, where, you know, you can see, you send an email in and it gets read out to someone who could one day, you never know, go on to be the actual Prime Minister of the country. So, there you go. That's how you can get involved. Coming up at 10 p.m.
Don't talk about me. I don't want somebody to talk about me.
That's a shame. Yes, I have a message for this gun-loving illegal migrant who goes by the name of Madha Passa. You won't want to miss that. That's at 10 p.m. But first, the assisted dying bill was introduced to Parliament today. MPs are set to vote on it next month. But actually, this could have massive, massive consequences. And I'm joined by the disability campaigner, George Fielding, who worries that a right to die could become a massive pressure to die for people like him. Stay tuned.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Still some pretty heavy rain around at the moment, but for many, tomorrow's going to be a fine day. We'll see some sunny spells, not as humid as today, but still pretty mild. Low pressures nearby. These weather fronts just dangling across the country have been producing pulses of heavy rain through the day. Still working northwards at the moment, especially wet over parts of northern England. Met Office yellow warning in place here, but staying pretty soggy over eastern Scotland. Rain moving across eastern England and out into the North Sea. In many western areas actually becoming dry overnight. It's not going to turn chilly though. Temperatures holding up in double digits. Many towns and cities staying in the teens. A drab start then early doors over eastern England and a pretty wet start across parts of Scotland, particularly across the north. This rain slowly clearing away though through the morning. Actually for rush hour through the central belt it may well be drying up. Certainly elsewhere many places having a dry morning rush hour. A lot of cloud initially over these eastern areas, but clearing away, and elsewhere we'll see some clearer skies coming through. Just maybe one or two scattered showers for Wales and southwest England. And as we get through the day, we'll see a few more of those here and perhaps for Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. The rain over northern Scotland, that continues to move away, and for many it's a dry and a bright day tomorrow. Some pleasant autumn sunshine. Turning a bit breezy in the west as a few more showers come in through the afternoon, but most relatively light winds and still pretty warm. Not as humid as today, but these temperatures still well above the average for the time of year, mid to high teens. Friday will start a little cooler with some mist and fog maybe in places, but generally another dry day across the east. Increasingly cloudy further west with some wet and very windy weather in the northwest, and with high tides that could cause some problems. So there's a Met Office yellow warning in place for that, and the potential for more wet and windy weather into the weekend. So do keep up to date with the forecast. Bye for now.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet, and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good
Morning,
to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean, and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution, and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment, and climate change. So he founded the organisation, and I joined him with three goals, really: education, looking at technology to scale solutions, and looking at how we develop more circular economy programs. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
Oh.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, I've got loads coming your way, but first, the Assisted Dying Bill has been introduced to Parliament today, with MPs set to vote on it later in November. Now, if passed, terminally ill people in England and Wales would have the right to end their lives. But the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has warned that labelled assisted dying dangerous as well. He's warned that it could lead to a slippery slope. where more people felt compelled to end their lives medically. And it's that degree of pressure that I'm very worried about. I've previously spoken about it in terms of the elderly, but I'm very pleased now to be joined by the disability campaigner and advocate, George Fielding. George, thank you very much for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure.
It's great to have you on the show. So, your views then on this? You feel as though it could put a bit of pressure on yourself, maybe?
Absolutely. Firstly, may I say that nobody wants anybody they love to die in pain or die without dignity. So we can all agree on that. So let's remove that from the debate. Right now, in Britain today, we have a broken NHS, a threadbare social care system, and an inhumane benefits system, and all of which are the barrier to people living independently and living joyful lives, and therefore, what we have at this moment in time is millions of families. Families with people with disabilities that are sadly like a powder keg, because there isn't the support in place in society to enable people to live the lives that they want, and to do all of these things at a time when Wes Streeting says the NHS is broken, to say that the Care Quality Commission isn't fit to regulate services is a real problem, and places great strain on people with disabilities.
So, do you fear for a time where assisted dying becomes normalised, legalised, and then normalised, and then people who say have a disability feel a pressure to end it all, or are encouraged to?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is reported that 54 MPs are already in favour of loosening the bill that's been put towards Parliament to make it easier and to make euthanasia, assisted dying, open to people with dementia, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, and other conditions like that. And therefore, we are in a situation where this debate is really opening up the conversation around whose life are we valuing? How do we value life? And are we truly able to build a society where people with disabilities can flourish? If I may say so, the idea that you know, from a socialist centrist perspective, that we are all on a day-to-day basis interdependent, kind of reliant on our family, but we deserve autonomy and freedom on our choices when we die. It couldn't actually be more further from the truth, because when you are ill, when you are vulnerable, you have more people in your life. There's more scope for things to go wrong. Now, so you know, and so the safeguards truly need to be in place. You know, we know that from places where legislation like this has been passed, like in Canada, in Australia, in Belgium, it does start. It is a slippery slope, and what I fear is this, if I may say so. Yeah. What I fear is that people in Westminster want to rush a bill through, and not focus on the dirty, hard, bureaucratic work that will take a long time in terms of reforming our public services.
So instead of doing the things that it would take to make people better or improving their quality of lives, you think that it's an easy get-out to give them the option to end it all?
Absolutely. 1 in 4 people that live in poverty have a disability, and 1 in 6 people in the population have a disability, and you acquire a disability as you get older. So, and so what you are dealing with when you're discussing, when you're working with and supporting people with a disability, like I have done as a social care professional as well as a wheelchair user, what you're dealing with is people that can't support the loss of, they can't get their head around the loss of function, the fact their life has changed. And there is a nuanced point here. The debate around assisted dying is such that it is always seen to be the kind thing to do to enable somebody to end their life. But actually, you know, you can be in the most traumatic situation in your life. You just had a diagnosis that you had never wished for, and you wouldn't treat anybody with that strain, with that mental health strain, in any other way, in another context.
Thank you very, very much for coming on today. It's a pleasure to meet you. I know that your words will have resonated powerfully with our audience as well, so I do hope to check in with you again very, very soon. So thank you very, very much. That is George Fielding there, a disability campaigner and advocate. Look, I've got loads more coming your way. You know, I had a rather interesting interaction with a chap called Madapasa.
Don't talk about me. I don't want somebody to talk about me.
Well, I'll have a little message for him when I come back. Stay tuned.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Don't talk about me. I don't want somebody to talk about me.
Well, I do have a message for that gun-loving illegal migrant who goes by the name Madapasa, and that's in a couple of minutes' time. Plus...
Last year, he promised to end the hotel farce. So where does he actually think they're going to end up?
Another huge Labour U-turn. Starmer expands the use of migrant hotels and...
I stand here also as a black man whose ancestors were taken in chains from Africa at the barrel of a gun.
Wait for this, because are Labour on the side of Britain's enemies? They want to weaken our place on the UN Security Council. Wasn't in the manifesto. Plus, should people be fined and taken to court if they refuse to say hello to their colleagues? On that note, it's a big hello to the Director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, the landlord and activist, Adam Brooks, and, of course, as well, the political commentator, Zoe Grunewald. Oh, and can you work out what's wrong here, please?
They're killing children. What's the purpose? Be proud of your heritage? Y'all understand there's a genocide, right?
Get ready, Britain, here we go. I don't think anyone should be intimidated by an illegal migrant with a stupid gun tattoo on his face. Next.
Good evening. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. UN peacekeepers say an Israeli tank has again fired at one of its watchtowers in southern Lebanon. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has held an emergency meeting on increasing aid in Gaza after the US threatened to take away some military support unless Israel boosted aid within 30 days. It comes as fighting continues in Gaza and Israel also hit Beirut for the first time in 5 days, while Hezbollah has fired more rockets into northern Israel, injuring at least 2 people. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has said he is looking at sanctioning 2 Israeli cabinet members. Back in the UK, the government is scrambling to find more hotel spaces for migrants after a surge in small boat arrivals. Almost 14,000 have arrived under Labour, overtaking the number of crossings under the previous government in 2024. Meanwhile, Italy has begun sending asylum seekers to Albania under a controversial new plan, with a naval ship arriving on Monday, transferring 16 men from Bangladesh and Egypt. Italy says up to 36,000 asylum seekers could be sent to Albania each year, but only non-vulnerable men from safe countries will qualify. In other news now, the debate on assisted dying is intensifying as new legislation is set to be introduced in Parliament for the first time in nearly a decade. Dame Esther Ranson, who has stage 4 lung cancer, has called for careful legislation, sharing her fears of a painful death and urging the public to write to MPs ahead of the vote. However, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, is warning the law could lead to a slippery slope. And finally, Prince William has called for a movement that creates systematic change to end homelessness in the UK. The Prince of Wales was speaking at tonight's Centrepoint Awards, a charity of which he is a patron. It comes after he defended his work trying to tackle homelessness, despite his own privileged royal life. In a new ITV documentary, the Prince of Wales is quizzed about critics who might question whether he's the right person to lead the project, which is designed to eradicate homelessness in 6 locations around the UK.
There will be some people who might question whether you're the right person to lead this project and its efforts to end homelessness. How would you respond to that?
I think everyone having a right to a safe and stable home benefits us all. I come with no other agenda than desperately trying to help people who are in need. And I see that as part of my role, is that why else would I be here if I'm not using this role properly to influence and help people where I can. And I like a big challenge. I do like that, but I can't do it on my own.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. On this show, I make no excuses for highlighting how the Channel migrant crisis is putting us all in danger. I feel very strongly that undocumented young men from goodness knows where flooding into Britain poses a direct threat to women and girls. Indeed, to us all, actually. I also think it's unfair. Taxpayers didn't vote for this, and yet you are being asked to pay for the privilege of your lives becoming worse as a result of the Channel migrant crisis. I also don't believe that many of them are genuine asylum seekers. For the last couple of days, we've highlighted a man called Madapasa, who, according to his social media accounts anyway, is trying to get to Britain. Here is a clip of him on what appears to be a beach in northern France. He then made threats to kill Nigel Farage.
Englishman, Nigel Pasa, don't talk about me. You not know me. I come to England because I want to marry with your sister. Don't talk about me more. I gonna come to England. I gonna mother.
Well, Madapasa has just made a video about me.
All people work here. He think Madapasa come here. He stand alive. He take a video. Now everybody talk about there's plates or there's a gun or there's people. So everybody want to kill Madapasa. Don't talk about Madapasa more. Don't talk about Madapasa. Then this place is danger for me. Please, don't talk about me. Don't talk about me. I don't want somebody to talk about me.
I would like to make you an offer, Madapasa. I would like to meet you in person. I'd like to know who you really are. I'd like to know why you want to come to Britain. You say you're not a danger to the people of Britain. Well, why don't we arrange to meet up and you can explain that to me in person? I'm happy to travel to wherever you are. Some of your videos say that you're in Britain. Others make it seem like you're in northern France. Some people think you're not actually trying to come to Britain at all and you're somewhere else in Europe playing a game with everyone on social media. Now, if this has all been a joke that's got out of hand, that's fine. But my email address is available online anyway, so everybody out there can always get hold of this, so this is nothing new. It's patrick.christys@gbnews.uk. Or, because you obviously have social media, you can just find me on Twitter, @Christys, and send me a direct message. Send me your phone number. We can arrange to meet up. I'll bring an interpreter with me so that we can communicate properly. I really do hope to hear from you. But on that note, Keir Starmer has just U-turned again. Here he is slamming the Tories for using migrant hotels.
They sit in hotels and digs for months on end at the taxpayers' expense. Last year, he promised to end the hotel farce. That's the talk. But because of his mess, there are thousands of people who can't claim asylum and can't be returned. So where does he actually think they're going to end up?
But today it's emerged that Labour has put calls out to asylum providers looking for more space at hotels after a surge in illegal arrivals. Now, this could mean reopening hotels that closed or finding new ones, which, yep, you will all be paying for. Starmer said he wanted to clear the backlog. Now he's coming up against his lawyer mates, who want to use every trick in the book to slow it down. You reap what you sow, Sir Keir. Let's get thoughts from my panel, the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and we've got the political commentator Zoe Grunewald. Mark, just on this Keir Starmer stuff, you know, expanding the use of migrant hotels. I mean, actually, that is... we were used to him doing things that weren't in the manifesto. This is actually just the opposite of something that was in the manifesto.
No, exactly right. I mean, they haven't got to grips with this at all, have they? Look, let me try and be as sympathetic as I can be, even though I'm not a political ally of the Prime Minister. You've got two big issues here that you're facing. One is the stock, if you like, and the other is the flow. Those are slightly inhumane ways of describing all of these human beings, but you've got this backlog problem of everybody who's already here, and you've got it being added to. I don't expect a government to be able to solve that overnight by magically clicking their fingers. But their only strategy to date has been smash the gangs. I mean, how's that going so far? That seems to be the only tool in their toolbox, the only golf club in their armoury. So I want to hear from them what their strategy is to turn this around in 6, 8, 12 months, something like that. And there doesn't seem to be anything at all. So if they said, look, it's going to get worse for a short period of time, but here's our thought-out plan to make it better over the long term, I'm all ears. But the silence is deafening.
Yeah, the point with this Madapassa stuff, Adam, and look, it remains to be seen what the reality is with this guy. I hope he gets in touch and we can maybe find out. But is that people have been saying for quite a long time that there is a very real and present danger from the people who are coming across the channel. And I mean,
I'm one of them.
The evidence would suggest that maybe Madapassa is one of those individuals.
Yeah, look, I've been on this TV channel for 3 years now, talking about the danger of some of these men that are coming across. I've been on social media 10 years warning of the dangers. We are importing men, and mainly men, from places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, that seemingly do not understand that they cannot touch our women and our children. The crime rates across Europe that are actually documented with asylum seekers is terrifying. In places like Germany, rape, sexual assault and violent crime has skyrocketed, and the official figures show that it's disproportionately asylum seekers and migrants. We are putting our head in the sand in this country if we don't think that's happening here. We are being put at danger, and it's got to stop.
I think the point as well is that, you know, OK, obviously not every single person coming across the channel or every single asylum seeker. You know,
one is too many,
but there is clearly an open door there for people who are, and that is a problem. So it's Keir Starmer, and just in the last couple of days we've had this call go out for increased use of migrant hotels, which he was on record numerous times slamming the Tories for. Also, I think it's 520 million quid for the asylum processing centres for at least another 8 years. It does look a lot like a bloke who is not going to stop the boats.
Well, I mean, I think we have to remember that Labour have only been in power for just over 100 days. I mean, they have inherited an appalling immigration system left by the Conservatives, where they let asylum processing just pile up. They basically stopped processing asylum claims. They created unsustainable systems of piling asylum seekers into hotels and barges and other unsuitable accommodation that wasn't safe, and created community tensions and all sorts of issues. Wasn't safe for the refugees, wasn't, you know, and it wasn't good for the community either. And now they are trying to sort it out, and they have, you know, over 10 years of that to do so.
All right.
But they stopped our only deterrent. It might only have been one policy, but they got rid of that.
I think they need a clearer plan of clearing up that mess rather than just saying what a mess.
One of the things, can I just say, one of the things that, and people will know from watching the last couple of nights, is that this particular chap, it appears on his TikTok that he's been documenting his travels across Europe, and it appears that he's in northern France, or certainly was until very recently. And there, what is abundantly clear is the prevalence of drugs and guns. So we know that that's just over there. You can see that on a clear day from Britain. So surely it's madness to allow people to keep coming from there and expecting everything to be fine. I mean, what has to happen before we do something about that?
Well, I mean, eventually the British electorate are going to absolutely demand that we do something about it. I think the Labour government is probably already losing the faith of the British electorate in this area as so many others. This is a very high priority for the electorate as a whole, a massive priority for an important segment of the electorate. And I'm looking for anyone to come forward and say, here is a medium-term plan. I'm not expecting a short fix, but what needs to be done in the next, say, year, 2 or 3 years to completely change this?
Let me just say, we said this on the show a few weeks ago. There are gunfights happening on the streets of Calais. There are machete gangs going round, you know, chopping people up.
Yeah.
Now, that is only across the water. People do not understand. We've got lefty commentators and lefty media, you know, attacking anyone like me as racist for not wanting these people here. But we have got a serious danger just across the water, and they are coming.
One of the issues with people like him, I don't just want to. I mean, he's singled himself out really because he's putting these videos out there. But people like that is that if he sets foot in Britain, then he will have to be considered for asylum under the government's laws. Surely that's wrong.
Well, but you have to have a system where you process people's claims, don't you? I mean, we don't... He's putting himself on social media and being provocative, and so we already know that he, you know, there are reasons why we might not think that he might be here for genuine reasons, but not everyone has that. People come here with no knowledge, and they have a right to have their asylum claim heard and processed. I mean, you know, I think we have to slightly take down the rhetoric. A lot of asylum seekers are genuinely fleeing war, persecution, and I understand that the public have lost trust in the government because it seems like it's got out of control. It seems that the government has deliberately not processed claims. They've lacked control over their immigration policy. But we do have to understand that asylum seekers, many of them are genuine, and they have a right to be here.
So you're a bit squiffy on that, and I'll get you to answer why, but I'll also ask you, if we are looking at committing now to more migrant hotels under Keir Starmer, that for me means more communities are going to be affected. And if we've already chocked the cities full, then this ends up being pushed into rural areas.
Of course.
And that really impacts rural areas. And you end up with... Oh, look, and where I've had a couple of relatives live is not particularly rural, but the 2 hotels that were in that town are now migrant hotels.
It's unbelievable.
And that's insane.
Yeah, listen, it is set to get worse. And Zoe's right to say Labour's only had 100 days plus. You can't blame everything immediately on them. Again, what's needed is maybe even accepting it's going to get worse for the next 6 or 8 months, but then having a plan about how the stock and the flow will be dealt with. And look, I'm with Zoe on this. People need to have a fair hearing, but where I was going squiffy on it, Patrick, is that hearing should be rapid. It should not take 18 months.
Absolutely.
It should take 18 days. This chap who you've offered to me, I mean, I think that should only take 18 minutes, his case. So it needs to be fast. And we need to be highly sceptical about people who are leaving safe havens to come here.
He's come from
is
Sweden.
not a dangerous country.
This man has come from Sweden. So my taxes, your taxes, are going to be spent on him. Now, if I find out, and the public finds out, that he's in a hotel being fed 3 times a day, free healthcare, when he's
because
done...
he's fleeing war from Sweden.
And he's threatened our politicians, the country will erupt again.
But there is, for my money, no story that is dealt with as lazily, as willfully lazily by the establishment media than the Channel migrant crisis. And this is one of the reasons why I am really pushing to try to go over to northern France, to speak to some of these people, to hopefully chat with our mate, Madapasa, because, like you said, they've all gone through other countries. And I want to find out from them themselves directly why they want to specifically come to Britain. And that's why I want to hear from them, as opposed to, why didn't you stay in Sweden? Why didn't you stay in Germany? Why didn't you stay in France? All of that. And we don't seem to be getting that from a huge amount of people in the media. And I would like the opportunity to go and do that. I don't like sitting here every single day and talking about this stuff without actually going and hearing.
I think that's really important. I think it's important to talk to people who we're actually talking about now and understand the reasons for them wanting to come to the UK. Many of them have family ties here, they speak the language. You know, because we're no longer a member of the EU and we don't have many safe and legal routes, there aren't many ways for them to get here apart from through illegal crossings. So I think it is really important to understand that journey.
Because the aspect there with Madapasa, and again, we wait for more confirmation about who that guy really is. But what is interesting in his videos there is he doesn't actually ever talk about claiming asylum. He just talks about, I want to come to Britain, which in itself is fair enough, but you can do that legally. You know, and this is the thing, that's kind of what I want to get to the bottom of. You know, do these people actually honestly think about, well, are they really seriously in danger in their own countries, or were they in danger in Europe? Is it just realistically about getting to Britain because maybe we offer them a bit more? I would suspect it is that, but I would like to go over there and hear it from them directly. But anyway, look, loads more still to come. It's time for the Great British Giveaway now on Brand, with the equivalent of an extra £3,000 in your bank account every month for the next year, a whopping 36k in tax-free cash. Here's how you can make that money yours.
This luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. Well, coming up, I've got the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Oh, and should people be fined and taken to court if they refuse to say hello to their colleagues? This is genuinely a thing that could be happening. But first, Keir Starmer has been accused of weakening Britain on the world stage after he pushed for reform to the UN Security Council. Apparently, he wants to add permanent representatives from countries like Brazil, India and, crucially, parts of Africa with massive links to Russia and China. Well, that comes hot off the heels of his decision to give up the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. Look, is the Labour Party on the side of Britain's enemies? Former Tory MP James Sunderland joins me soon.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, the first thing on in my mind when I heard about this is, what has this country come to when we're talking about getting kids as young as 6 years old to be jabbed weekly, or however often it is, because they are too fat? Where are the parents in all of this? There's three things actually here that are important. Number one is we do not know the long-term consequences of these jabs. So if I had a child and I was going to let them have the jab, I would be feeling like I'm treating them like a lab rat, to be quite honest with you, because we don't know the long-term consequences. Secondly, the manufacturers are clear that some of the potential side effects can be very serious. We're talking about potentially pancreatitis, let's get my word out, and also it lists as a potential side effect thyroid cancer. Arguably, it's called the gamble jab, to be honest with you, because of these potential side effects at the moment. And then thirdly, I come back to the parents. Where are the parents in all of this because they are the role models. So it really is about parenting, and it's about parenting from being a role model yourself in terms of being slim and healthy and not expecting a jab to take your place and other people to take your place. If you have children, they are your responsibility. Think before you breed. The other thing you need to remember with this is when you stop taking that jab, it is highly likely that you're going to put all the weight back on. Now, the thought of a child of 6 years of age, starting with that jab, conditioning them mentally to live with that jab, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely not on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Coming up, should people be fined and taken to court if they refuse to say hello to their colleagues? Honestly, apparently this is a thing now. But first, not content with scrapping pensioners' winter fuel payments and accepting more than 100 grand's worth of freebies, Keir Starmer has taken it upon himself to reform the United Nations Security Council. What's that you hear? Clamours coming from absolutely nobody to do this. He wants to add permanent representation from Africa, Brazil, India, Japan and Germany. Now, critics have argued that this is just the latest attempt by Starmer to dilute Britain's power on the world stage. Why would we want to do this? On Monday, the PM was forced to rule out paying slave trade reparations to Caribbean nations after this video of the Foreign Secretary resurfaced.
I'm afraid, as Caribbean people, we are not going to forget our history. We don't just want to hear an apology, we want reparation.
Yeah, interesting use of the word we there, isn't it? But that comes hot off the heels of Starmer's decision to hand over sovereignty to the Chagos Islands and Mauritius. I'm joined now by former Tory MP and military officer James Sunderland. James, thank you very much. This is yet another thing that wasn't in the manifesto. Why would it be a bad thing to dilute Britain's power at the UN Security Council?
Well, I think we've seen, Patrick, that the Labour manifesto for the last election is a blueprint for nothing. Starmer blows with the wind. He's got no ideological compass whatsoever. And I think we've seen that the decisions in foreign policy terms over the last 100 days have been not just disastrous, but scandalous. I mean, let's just go through it very briefly.
Yeah, could you be direct? Sorry, James, just say, because, you know, look, hey, fair play. You know, some of our viewers and listeners might not be entirely sure as to exactly what the UN Security Council is, why it matters for us that we were a permanent member of it, and why it could be a bad thing that some random African nation could find its way on there, for example.
Well, the UN Security Council was formed after the Second World War. It was formed by the five big powers, China, the USA, Russia, Britain and France, to keep the world safe following total war. And it's really important that we maintain the status quo as best we can, because if you allow other countries to come onto that council, other countries to have the veto, particularly with the rising influence of China, how can we be assured of the integrity of those decisions? And my fear at the moment is that Starmer has been in power for 100 days. He's rewriting history already. He doesn't have a mandate, in my view, to sort of undertake this kind of bold approach so quickly. And I think it's a travesty.
OK, and so the theory would be that some, you know, China and Russia have been doing lots of work in parts of Africa and other parts of the world as well that could then become permanent members, and then all of a sudden, basically, it's like China or Russia having another seat there, which could be a huge problem for us. This cannot be something that Keir Starmer has come up with in the last 100 days, can it? Surely this is something he must have been thinking about before, which begs the question, why wasn't this in the manifesto? Is this another thing that people would just simply not have voted for if they knew about it?
Well, I agree. I mean, the role of any Prime Minister is to defend the rights and the freedoms and the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of those he serves. We've seen already that Starmer doesn't want to do that. This is some kind of woke apologist internationalism that he stands for. He doesn't have, in my view, a mandate yet to be making such bold statements. The veto exists for a reason. The UN Security Council has survived in its current form since the late 1940s. And it's really important right now that we are very careful in terms of who we are considering allowing coming onto the UN Security Council.
I just do not see what on earth the possible benefit for Britain could be. I really don't get it. And I'm sure Keir Starmer will have to make a case for this at some point, and no doubt he will. But I cannot possibly see what the case for Britain, other than to try to say, what, we're nice on the international stage, or we're already nice. That's why half the world wants to come here. But I do have to put it to you, though, that, the Tories have allowed this to happen because you let Keir Starmer in, and we haven't got a proper opposition at the moment, have we, to push back on this kind of stuff?
Well, I think that we've had 14 years in government, we know that, but Labour's also had 14 years to prepare for government. So where Labour is right now in its first 100 days is complete nonsense. What's important for me in foreign policy terms is that the decisions of the last 100 days, so the withdrawal of the export licences, 30 of them for Israel, ceding the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, the no commitment to 2.5% GDP, reparations for slavery, would you believe that? And now the UN Security Council suggestion of reform. I mean, this is a guy who is rudderless at the moment. He is a walking disaster. He's a calamity. And at the moment, the UK is not just weakened internationally, it's a laughing stock. We have to rein him in, and you are right. We need a much stronger and effective opposition.
Yeah, I mean, look, a functioning democracy certainly needs one as well. And look, it plays in. I'm sorry, but it does play into the idea that the Labour Party, or Keir Starmer and his mates, have kind of been on the side of the people who actually tend to oppose Britain, as opposed to Britain itself, something in which no doubt Keir Starmer and the numerous union flags that he has behind him at all times now would vehemently deny. But thank you very, very much, James. It's great to have you on the show. Much appreciated. James Sunderland there, former Tory MP, military officer. That's the story that I think might have slipped under your radar, but it's there, and it's there for all to see now, which is that conceivably we are going to be weaker on the world stage as a completely crackpot idea to allow other countries who are very close with China and Russia to have a seat on the UN Security Council. Ridiculous. But it is decision time in the Tory leadership election. The race to lead heats up on Thursday the 17th of October. It's Robert Jenrick versus Kemi Badenoch, and it's live here on GB News at 7 p.m. And then it's reaction from me and my live studio audience and a panel of political heavyweights from 9 p.m. It is a top panel as well. Reveal all tomorrow. But you can get involved. In fact, we'd love you to. Send in your questions to gbviews@gbnews.com with decision time in the headline of the email. Please don't forget to include your full name and where you're from so we can give you a massive shout out as well. Coming up, it's front pages time, so stay tuned because in just a couple of minutes' time I'll have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you, so you don't want to miss that. Oh, and should people be fined and taken to court if they refuse to say hello to their colleagues? Stay tuned.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Still some pretty heavy rain around at the moment, but for many, tomorrow's going to be a fine day. We'll see some sunny spells, not as humid as today, but still pretty mild. Low pressures nearby. These weather fronts just dangling across the country have been producing pulses of heavy rain through the day. Still working northwards at the moment, especially wet over parts of northern England. Met Office yellow warning in place here, but staying pretty soggy over eastern Scotland. Rain moving across eastern England and out into the North Sea, and many western areas actually becoming dry overnight. It's not going to turn chilly though. Temperatures holding up in double digits. Many towns and cities staying in the teens. A drab start then early doors over eastern England, and a pretty wet start across parts of Scotland, particularly across the north. This rain slowly clearing away though through the morning. Actually, for rush hour through the central belt, it may well be drying up. Certainly elsewhere, many places having a dry morning rush hour. A lot of cloud initially over these eastern areas, but clearing away, and elsewhere we'll see some clearer skies coming through. Just maybe one or two scattered showers for Wales and southwest England, and as we go through the day we'll see a few more of those here and perhaps for Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. The rain over northern Scotland, that continues to move away, and for many it's a dry and a bright day tomorrow. Some pleasant autumn sunshine. Turning a bit breezy in the west as a few more showers come in through the afternoon, but most relatively light winds and still pretty warm. Not as humid as today, but these temperatures still well above the average for the time of year, mid to high teens. Friday will start a little cooler with some mist and fog maybe in places, but generally another dry day across the east. Increasingly cloudy further west with some wet and very windy weather in the northwest. And with high tides, that could cause some problems. So there's a Met Office yellow warning in place for that, and the potential for more wet and windy weather into the weekend. So do keep up to date with the forecast. Bye for now.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christys, tomorrow as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tomorrow, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I've got the very first look at tomorrow's front pages for you now, so here we go. We're going to start with the Metro. Devastating. Boy 7 dies as home flattened in what is a suspected gas leak explosion, destroying, a group of flats. Absolutely devastating, that indeed. Let's go to the Eye. Benefits to rise £1.50 a week as Rachel Reeves faces a Labour backlash. So there's some stuff brewing here. So ministers are now set to announce a smaller than expected increase in universal credit as a result of inflation dropping to 1.7%. This means that potentially benefits are not going to rise as much as people had thought. But here, if you follow it onto the Daily Express, comes another whopper because Reeves is accused over a bogus £40 billion black hole. She's been accused, it is what it says in the tin, really. She's accused of essentially lying about the scale of the black hole. And then the Daily Telegraph rounds off this particular set of front pages nicely by saying the budget to be the biggest tax raiser in history. And Mark, I'll start with you on this. Are people just going to leave Britain?
That's happening already, Patrick. The number of millionaires leaving the United Kingdom permanently is higher than any other country on the planet bar China. So already money is departing the country. And it's not just our people leaving, a good number appear to be, but it's our people taking their foot off the gas, retiring early, for example. And is there capital flight? Are people going to think, well, actually, I wasn't intending to move to Britain, but I was intending to invest a large amount of money there, but with this tax regime, I'm not going to do it. So here's the problem with all of this government spending and the so-called black hole. As Ronnie Reagan used to say, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and before you know it, you're talking real money. And we are overspending as a government. Forget Rachel Reeves' confected black hole. The truth of it is, in aggregate terms, state spending in the UK is too high and unsustainable, and it needs to come down. And we can't dial taxes any higher without really harming the economy because of all the incentive effects and the disincentive effects that go with higher taxation.
Yeah, Adam, I mean, it's a question really, I think, of social contract, isn't it? I wouldn't mind paying more tax if I genuinely thought that there would be an increase in the kind of quality of service that I'm seeing.
I've lost count how many wheels, alloys that I've broke over the last 5 years on the state of our roads. You know, I've lost track of people moaning to me that they can't see a doctor or a dentist. What are our taxes going towards? And this Labour government is going to put them up even further. It's going to kill businesses. A lot of the rumoured tax rises are going to kill businesses, especially pubs that I work with. And I'm so disheartened at the future. If I could afford to move abroad, I would. Not only for the taxes, but the crime in this country is getting beyond a joke.
Well, we wouldn't want to lose you, and I'm glad that you can't afford to move. So is this actually a bit of a masterstroke by Labour here? Are they rolling the wicket for one of the most disastrous budget events in history, only for us to listen to it and go, it's all right, actually?
I don't know. I don't think anything's nailed on at the minute, I'm going to be completely honest. I think what we always see around this time is lots of things being thrown out by the Treasury to see what the public reaction is, to see how it sticks, to see whether they think they can bring it in and maybe people won't be too annoyed about it. And I think that's what we're seeing now. I'm not sure everything is nailed on. I think a lot is still in flux. I think, you know, it's really interesting to hear you guys talk about, you know, people are leaving. One of the reasons people don't want to stay here and invest in the UK is partly because the state of public services are so bad, but also because we have had a government that hasn't even been able to build a new railway. You know, it hasn't been able to invest in its infrastructure. If I was a millionaire CEO looking at the UK as a place to invest, I would say, no thanks, it looks rubbish. What you need is a government that is willing to invest in the infrastructure, willing to get businesses moving and growing, and then it becomes a place that is attractive for investors.
Yeah, but I don't think you could look at Britain and say the real problems in Britain is that state spending is too low, taxes are way too low, and regulation is way too light. I think most people would look at Britain, particularly those that are thinking about investing a large amount of money, and say taxes are too high, government spending's too high, to a remarkable lack of effect, I would agree, and regulation becomes more burdensome with each passing day. I think we're going to discuss that next.
Yeah.
That would be my broad view. And unfortunately, I think the Labour government has taken some of the things that Conservatives have done wrong and doubled down on it. Yeah. Thinks that more state spending, more tax and more regulation is the way to get the economy growing, and I think we're going to learn the very hard way that it ain't.
Just on this, because we are a bit pressed for time, and you mentioned over-regulation there. I thought this story was quite funny, although, you know, when I line myself in court over it, I probably won't. But you might be breaking employment law if you don't say hello back to a colleague. That's right. So the ruling came in the case of a recruitment manager who won an unfair dismissal claim after complaining that her managing director refused to say hello to her. Nadine Hansen had greeted her new boss 3 times when she arrived for work in September 2023, but was deliberately ignored every time. This is according to an employment tribunal. An employment judge, Seth Davies, concluded that his behaviour was, quote, unreasonable, ruling in her favour. Adam, I'll start with you. I mean, you employ people, right? I mean, you, to be fair, probably would just say hello to them. But if you didn't say hello to them, and that was because it's I
find this completely ridiculous. How are companies meant to operate and function with ridiculous things like this? How do you even prove that? How did she prove that her boss didn't say hello? I mean, what did he do? Admit it? I don't know, because how can you prove this stuff?
But also, does it matter? You know, like, this is the thing, like, was her life negatively impacted to the extent,
well,
you know?
I don't think this is not the full story. If you read the piece, actually, it was a sort of pattern of bullying behaviour, and they said that the evidence he gave to defend himself, they just found it wasn't sufficient, it wasn't credible. So actually, you know, you can point anyone who's been bullied at work will know actually it's really hard to describe exactly how it made you feel and exactly what happened, because it is a pattern of behaviour. And when you do pull out examples, sometimes it can seem, you know, almost like, oh, is that it? But it's really hard to explain the cumulative effect that these behaviours can have on you. And I think if you read, actually, the details of the case, it wasn't just this one incident. It was a number of things. But this is something that is, in isolation, quite trivial.
I think the problem here is that at some point, employee rights get so big that the staff aren't working for you, you're working for them. They have so many things that they can rest on. Now, I'm not saying that you shred all of it and just torch it to the ground, but usually, if you're not getting on at work, your best thing to do is to exit and find a new employer. And we do have a pretty robust and flexible labour market. So, you know, it just seems to me now that running a business involves so much risk. I don't know the details of this case, and you're right, Zoe, I think it goes beyond just not saying hello. But it seems to me there's now so much risk involved in making a misstep as an entrepreneur that we're no doubt, in my view, disincentivising entrepreneurial activity.
Yeah, it does seem to me, though, like it's very, very difficult to get sacked. Very difficult to get sacked. So that you actually could, you know, pretty much say anything, couldn't you, really?
And very easy to get sued.
Yeah.
Yes.
OK, all right, look, guys, look, I'm just going to... yeah, all right, I'm just going to go to a quick break now. I think when we come back, I think I do potentially have a bit of breaking news for you, so stay tuned.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I'm joined now by an acknowledged authority on Ludwig van Beethoven. He's already written 7 books on the subject, and next week his 8th is released. It's called In Search of Beethoven, and it stands apart as a deeply personal account of John Souché's relationship with the great composer as he follows his footsteps from Bonn to Vienna. Yes, I introduce author, journalist and classic FM presenter John Souché.
Hello, Michael.
It's delightful to have you here, and you have, as I say, written now 8 books on Beethoven. So the question is, why Beethoven?
Well, the word that is often used that I don't like is obsession, obsessive, because somehow there's something not quite right about that. The word that I use is passion. I have a passion for this man's life and music that began, I suppose, around 50 years ago, sometime in my early 20s. I can't remember the exact moment. He kind of crept up on me, and suddenly, as I was a journalist, TV journalist all my life, but before that I was a failed musician. I wanted to be a professional musician, but fortunately for the world of music, I realised I didn't have the talent. But this man's music crept up on me, and I knew from then that it would not go away, it would only increase, and that is what's happened. There are other composers I will listen to, minor names like Mozart, Wagner, Haydn, but Beethoven just does it for me. I was highly educated musically at school because I loved it, to the extent that I wanted to turn professional, but as I say, I didn't have the talent, but that has stayed with me. I read music, I understand music, as you say, I play the trombone, in those days to quite a high level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back, everybody, to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, I have to bring you some breaking news, and it's incredibly sad news, I'm afraid. Former One Direction star Liam Payne has reportedly been found dead outside a hotel in the Argentinian capital of Buenos Aires. This is according to Reuters. It's also according to numerous local media outlets. He's 31 years old, he's a British musician, and apparently he was found dead after falling from the hotel's 3rd floor. This is according to local emergency services. So just to reiterate, that is the former One Direction singer Liam Payne has sadly been found dead after falling from a balcony in Argentina at the age of 31. We'll get you more details on this as we get it, and I imagine they will start coming through quite rapidly now that this has got out there. Look, incredibly sad news. I don't know, is anyone a particular One Direction fan? I mean, I kind of feel like I grew up with them because I saw them come through on...
I met him about 10, 12 years ago in a nightclub, and I spoke to him. He was a very pleasant fella, nice guy. And I feel for his family and his friends. Very tragic.
It is indeed. I mean, Zoe, obviously, when we spoke about this quickly in the break, I mean, apparently tributes have already started pouring in. Police are said to have been called to reports of a man actingly aggressive at the hotel who could have been under the effect of drink or drugs. There's no indication at this stage, by the way, that that person was Liam Payne. I don't want to give that impression. But a body was found in an internal patio of the hotel. It's desperately sad news.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, I grew up with One Direction. I loved them, as all my friends did. They were absolutely, they were like the Beatles back then. I mean, it was amazing, and it's just devastating news. And obviously don't want to speculate on the cause or anything, but yeah, just hopes and prayers with his family.
Yeah, indeed. And I believe also he is a father, isn't he?
I believe so, yes.
I think he's got a child with Cheryl Cole.
Yeah.
So, that's quite a young child, I think, called Bear. So he leaves behind a child as well at such a young age. Tragic.
Yeah, it is tragic. Look, I'm old enough that I was closer to growing up with the Beatles than with One Direction myself. But you get a lot of tragedies in the music business, don't you? I mean, for all of the glamour and the wealth and the fame and all of the rest of it, God knows what the circumstances are. But early deaths of these superstars seem to happen with pretty frightening regularity.
Indeed. Look, for viewers who are maybe just joining us, I will reiterate that breaking news that's just coming through to us here, and again I'll emphasise that there will no doubt be much more detail to follow. But former One Direction singer Liam Payne has died outside a hotel in the Argentine capital of Buenos Aires. That is according to local newspaper La Nación. They reported that just a few moments ago. The 31-year-old British musician was found dead, having fallen from the hotel's 3rd floor, and that is according to emergency services at the scene. Absolutely devastating stuff. You know, we'll no doubt be getting tributes paid to him from his former band members as well. But it just seems like you said, you know, there's a disproportionately high rate of stuff like this happening amongst musicians and rock stars and personalities. I wonder if it kind of almost goes with the territory to an extent.
One Direction were a global phenomenon, and there are going to be millions of young women and young men that are devastated tonight at this news. Again, my thoughts go to his friends and his family and his kids. Terrible.
It's interesting, though, in terms of being able to deal from such a young age with that level of fame. And, you know, I don't want to speculate, and I seriously would not like to speculate about what has maybe led up to this. Again, just going off a report that's in the Daily Mirror at the moment, local police services there apparently said that there was reports of a man who was acting aggressively and believed to be under the influence of drugs. We do not necessarily know that that is Liam Payne. I don't want to give that impression. Anything could have gone on, you know, hotel, Buenos Aires, all of that stuff. But being able to deal, Zoe, with that level of fame from such a young age, being plucked from complete obscurity to being, like, one of the most famous people in the world, it's a very difficult thing, I think.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's not just the sudden level of fame, which really over the past decade has become astronomically bigger than it even used to be, thanks to social media, and the parasocial relationship that fans now can have with the celebrities they admire. But it's also, you know, there isn't regulation in the music industry to protect young celebrities. You know, there isn't kind of levels of safeguarding and care. It really is one of those industries that just kind of works by who you know, and you either kind of get on with it and deal with it, or you don't. And we've seen time and time again, you know, as you were saying,
Amy Winehouse.
Yeah, young, amazingly talented stars falling victim to tragedy because, you know, the music industry doesn't really protect its own. And obviously we're not speculating what happened to Liam Payne, but, you know, devastating stories again and again.
Yeah, no, indeed. An absolute shocker. Well, look, there's going to be a lot more about this coming out. There is not a huge amount more detail just at the moment, other than apparently there was reports of some kind of disturbance at this hotel in Buenos Aires. By the time that the emergency services arrived, Liam Payne was apparently already dead. Apparently the hotel is the Casa Sur in Palermo, that's according to police. And Liam Payne fell from the 3rd floor balcony there. I mean, just, you know, absolutely devastating news, really, for the legions of One Direction fans. I mean, this will be one of those stories that just, you know, that just goes globally significant.
I think that's right. And as we were saying about fame, I mean, quite oftentimes we look at British groups and they don't actually break through the global glass ceiling. One Direction absolutely did that. I mean, you mentioned the Beatles earlier. They were probably the first Brits to do that. But this was a global pop phenomenon, not just a British one. So, you know, terrible news.
Yeah, indeed. Look, we're seeing tributes being paid from loads of people at the moment online as people just kind of, you know, emerge to this news, really. Piers Morgan's hopped on board straight away, said, you know, absolute tragedy, and indeed it is. You know, we're waiting for, obviously, his band members or former band members to release any kind of statements about that. No doubt Simon Cowell will as well. Absolutely horrendous news, and quite possibly will raise questions about how young pop stars are indeed looked after, both before, you know, and after their initial level of fame. But you said you met him a couple of times.
No, I met him once in a nightclub in London.
Long before he was famous, was this, or as he was famous?
No, this is about 10, 12 years ago. Right, okay. And got to think, I didn't even know who I was speaking to at the time, and then I realised, and he was very humble, very nice, polite young man. You know, who went on to be one of the most famous people in the world. Very sad, very sad.
Yeah,
I mean, any death is sad, but when you know there are millions around the world that are probably crying now because of this news.
Indeed. One thing that I do wonder whether or not will happen as a result of this is some kind of One Direction reunion now, because actually there was, whether or not this maybe focuses them a little bit, I know they've been going off to do their own things. Harry Styles, by far and away the most successful, you know, to break out on his own. I'm not entirely sure as to that they parted on great terms. It didn't sound as though they all did.
But tragedy can sometimes bring you back together, right?
Yeah. I've just got a little bit of an update on this now, so I'll give you some more detail on it. So, former One Direction member Payne has died in Buenos Aires at the age of 31. The pop star reportedly fell from a third floor of a hotel in Argentinian capital of Buenos Aires. Several witnesses told TMZ, the publication there, that Mr. Payne had fallen from his room shortly after 5 p.m, that's local time, on Wednesday evening. Emergency services were believed to be present outside the hotel. A red tent has been erected at the scene. Investigations into the 31-year-old's death are ongoing. He, of course, shot to fame in 2010, alongside Niall Horan, Zayn Malik, Harry Styles and Louis Tomlinson. And he was previously in a relationship with Cheryl Cole, and their son, Bear Gray, was born in 2017. So, sadly, he leaves a lot behind him. Thoughts with his family at this time. Sorry to end the show on that note, but big international breaking news for you. I will be back again tomorrow at 9 p.m, so I'll see you then.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Still some pretty heavy rain around at the moment, but for many, tomorrow's going to be a fine day. We'll see some sunny spells, not as humid as today, but still pretty mild. Low pressures nearby. These weather fronts just dangling across the country have been producing pulses of heavy rain through the day. Still working northwards at the moment, especially wet over parts of northern England. Met Office yellow warning in place here, but staying pretty soggy over eastern Scotland. Rain moving across eastern England and out into the North Sea, and many western areas actually becoming dry overnight. It's not going to turn chilly though. Temperatures holding up in double digits. Many towns and cities staying in the teens. A drab start then early doors over eastern England, and a pretty wet start across parts of Scotland, particularly across